YouTube. We are live on Facebook, simulcasting the Huddle Up podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Zack Kelberman, the lead NFL writer for Heavy.com. Zack, we are 24 hours or so removed from the Broncos taking on the Chiefs for the first time in 2019. Are they going to snap this 7-game losing streak they've got with the Chiefs?
I made my bold prediction in the roundtable we'll have coming out, for the game, but it's going to be a hard-fought game. I don't want to give any surprises away. I think it's going to be a hard-fought defensive battle. I think Vic Fangio will bring his magic to the table, but like any other game, it's going to come down to can the offense with Joe Flacco match the opponent's offense, and I'm not sure about that, though.
Yeah, well, it actually just came out. The Mile High Roundtable is published. It's live at milehighhuddle.com. You guys can all go check that out, see what myself and Zack had to say about this game in written form anyway. We're going to talk all about it here tonight with you guys, but go check it out if you want to read that. Yeah, it's an ignominious streak the Denver Broncos are on right now. And in the NFL, rarely, even the Patriots, they are a dominant team year in and year out. But they don't go 7 games in a row beating the Dolphins or beating the Jets or the Bills. There's always, that odd game. You never know what to expect in a division rivalry game. And the Chiefs have just had the Broncos number.
Yeah, it's just been one of those things. They just can't get off the schneid against them. And maybe they'll split this year if they can come together cohesively. I don't know. I do give them a fair shot of hanging in this game. And I do like their chances more now than I did, let's say, 3 weeks ago. It just comes down to, like Seth mentioned, an Andy Reid coach team losing 3 games in a row. How rare is that? Can the Broncos be the team that kind of makes that history? I have my reservations.
Quick hello to those of you who are with us currently live. More and more are filtering into the room. Buana Beast, Flippant Booch, Stuart McPeak, what's up, buddy? Brandon Barrett, Big Daddy Kane, Jacob Smith, what's up, all you guys? Welcome. Thank you for joining us once again. This is a live simulcast episode of the Huddle Up podcast, Mile High Mailbag style, because Zack and I are your football priests, and each and every week we're here to offer you the absolution and answers to your burning Broncos questions. And lately we've been doing it via these simulcasts on YouTube and now Facebook, and we love doing it this way. The pre-submitted questions on Twitter and on YouTube are always great. You can always send those in, and we're going to check them out. We're going to honor those and fit you in. But being able to engage, Zack, with our awesome listeners live in real time is there's just something incredibly fun about it.
Yeah, it's definitely interactive, and I like seeing the real-time questions come in and kind of getting the pulse of the fan base on a question-by-question basis. I love the banter. I love when people disagree. I love, getting some pushback against my takes. It makes it all the more fun for me.
Quick reminder for those of you who want to get some action in on tomorrow night's Broncos-Chiefs game. If you go over to mybookie.ag and you use the promo code OVERTIME, they will double your money, your first deposit. So go check that out, code OVERTIME. That lets them know that the Huddle Up podcast sent you over there. But Zack, let's focus on, well, real quick, before we dive in and hear what's on the minds of our listeners. And as always, listeners, viewers, those of you who are live with us right now, submit your questions, and we will get to each and every one as best as we can here. But I wanted to get your thoughts just really quickly on 2 topics. One, Brock Osweiler chose to hang up his cleats at 28 years old. Nothing doing. He couldn't find any additional opportunities in the NFL. He officially retired, had a nice little sit down, or at least a conversation on the phone with Mike Kliss of 9 News. And a lot was made about, of course, his impact on the Denver Broncos 2015 World Championship season, in which he went 5-2 as a starter and really helped the Broncos, win the necessary games down the stretch to get into the playoffs. And then, of course, halfway through that Week 17 finale with the number 1 seed on the line, 5 interceptions or 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions, I think it was, 5 turnovers, and the Broncos end up going back to Peyton, and the rest is history. But your thoughts on your send-off, if you will, to Brock Osweiler heading off into the sunset?
I mean, it was fun covering him for the little time that I did, and he definitely made a nice career for himself, made a lot of money. He won a title, got a ring, and what more could you really ask? He got out of the game healthy, gets to enjoy his life, gets to enjoy his riches, and he'll always be remembered, though, as that bridge in that championship season to get to and Peyton Manning's swan song and send him off on the right foot. So we'll always, I guess, in Broncos country, hold him in fair regard. The Brock Lobster, all the memes that respond with Brock Osweiler, he just had kind of a rough ending to his career. But I do wish him well in his personal life and his future endeavors.
If he wouldn't have made that one fateful decision to go to Houston, if he would have stayed where he was supposed to, only the Lord knows, the football gods themselves, what would have happened with the Brock Osweiler story. But anyway, let's get to some questions here. Take a peek inside the Mile High Mailbag, and let's go with this pre-submitted question here from Buana Beast. He says, Chiefs are injured. Eric Fisher, the left tackle, cornerback Kendall Fuller, defensive tackle Chris Jones, wide receiver Sammy Watkins, a litany of players ruled out of Thursday night's game. How does this change Denver's game plan? Will Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce receive an extra defender with Watkins out? Will we move Vaughn around to attack backup linemen, assuming Cam Irving is the left tackle? And will KC run speed sets with both Hill and Hardman and test our DBs? I think the answer to that last question, Zach, is I think you're going to see them test this Fangio defense.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing, when we talked to Seth Kaiser yesterday on who covers the Chiefs, of course, for The Athletic, he touched on the fact that Cam Irving at left tackle, filling in for Eric Fisher, has not been good, beleaguered to all get out. To me, even though that's, Von Miller typically rushes off the defensive left, offensive right side, I'd like to see Vic Fangio kind of come after Cam Irving there with Von Miller, and, nothing against Malik Reed and nothing against the new guy, what's his name, Jerry Atachu. But I want to see Vaughn, see if he can exploit that injury situation.
Yeah, and Fisher has been a tackle that's kind of given Vaughn fits over the years, so his being down to the replacement level now is certainly a boon for the Broncos defense. I'm with you. You always have to exploit the biggest weakness of a team, same as when Isaac Adams in a game, that's who the opponents attack through the air. I'd like to see, obviously you can't blitz Mahomes too much. You got to kind of play him a little conservatively because he is so dangerous. He has some weapons in that offensive grouping there. Even with Sammy Watkins out, he still has McCole Hardman, has Tyreek Hill, he has Sean McCoy, and he's still Patrick Mahomes. So even though the injuries do level the playing field a little bit, they're still a very dangerous team who the Broncos have to account for on every single play.
The key with Mahomes is, he is, I think, the best quarterback in the NFL right now. And we can get into, semantics and the Tom Brady's and the Aaron Rodgers of the world. But in terms of just the being a dynamic thrower of the football, an athlete in charge of the game, he's the man. However, and I don't want to detract from what he does in the pocket. However, the vast majority of his chunk plays and his big explosive highlight plays, they come when he's outside the pocket, when he has to get on the move. That ankle is compromising his ability to do that somewhat. I think the Broncos, if they can walk that, it's all about pressure in this game on Mahomes, but at the same time, walking that razor's edge a la, I think it was week 8 in 2015 when the Broncos took on the Packers and held Aaron Rodgers to 77 yards passing. They did a great job of balancing pressure with containment, and the results spoke for themselves. And if they can somehow find, I know it's a different coaching staff, mostly different personnel, but if they can find a way to walk that same razor's edge and try and keep Mahomes in the pocket, I think it's going to really help that secondary, and it could lead to some turnovers as well.
That's a really good point. And Mahomes is dangerous from the pocket, to be sure, too. He's always dangerous no matter where he plays on the field. But if the Broncos do win this game, if they do spring an upset, part of the reason will be because Draymond Jones, DeMarcus Walker, or Shelby Harris had great games in the interior, causing pressure, disrupting the timing of the passing scheme in Andy Reid's system. If they want to win this game, if they want to contain Mahomes, like you said, don't let him get comfortable, don't let him escape, get it in his face and stay in his face, and don't break contain.
I'm thinking we have a hunter here on our hands in Mr. Dylan Buck Elk. He says, what's the likelihood of Chris Harris Jr. staying with the team if the defense continues having this newfound success in the Fangio scheme? I don't think, Zach, it really changes what you and I had to say at the beginning of this season, which is barring an all-pro kind of 2014 caliber season like Harris had back then, when he not only was getting all the accolades, but he was a analytics darling, and that's when his star skyrocketed into the stratosphere. Barring that kind of a profile, that kind of a season as a Bronco, I think these two sides kind of came to terms with washing their hands of each other after this season. Now, you never say never, but I wouldn't quite yet get your hopes up.
Right, and the Broncos having this newfound consistent success presupposes that Chris Harris Jr. is a part of that success. And if he goes on to having a big season or makes a Pro Bowl suddenly, he's going to want a big contract. He made it clear he wants to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and that's just not going to happen in Denver. So like Chad said, I think both sides resolve themselves to the fact that he's more of a mercenary, and 2019 was an all-in season for Chris Harris Jr. and the Broncos. I would look for them to part ways next offseason.
Longtime listener of the show. Jacob says, Chiefs are going to get a heavy dose of Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman and the power running game. Absolutely, Zach. That's something that has to happen. If there's this Chiefs defense is not good. A. B, where they're really soft is against the run. That front seven is lacking. And especially Chris Jones being out, that's the weakness. That's where the Broncos can kind of step on the throat. Those big boys up front for the Broncos, your Dalton Reisners, your Ronald Learys, your Garrett Bowles, they're going to have a big game opening up some holes in those backs. If they can, really be feeling it, so to speak, and be in the zone and their vision's on point, they can capitalize on this Chiefs defense.
This game, if the Broncos do win, it will be won in the trenches on both sides. We talked about disrupting Mahomes' timing with the interior defensive linemen. Like you mentioned, Chad, getting the run game going and leaning on Freeman, leaning on Lindsay, and taking the game out of Flacco's hands as much as possible, letting him just be the secondary, the cherry on top of the attack, certainly not the primary part of the focus of the game plan. If they do have success, if they can continue running the ball down the Chiefs' throats consistently, it would keep Mahomes off the field. It could kill the clock, lead to scoring drives. Yes, if they win this game, they got to get the two running backs going. It's paramount.
We're talking about, for the Broncos, the rushing offense is ranked 15th in the NFL, averaging 116 yards per game. Meanwhile, the Chiefs' defense is literally ranked 30th against the run. They are relinquishing over 160 yards per game on the ground. So, and that also stacks up with, it's a great point and an observation there by Jacob, because it stacks up with what, anyone who really knows football understands this in terms of trying to slow down a Peyton Manning offense in 2013, and that applies to a Patrick Mahomes offense in 2019, which is you got to keep them on the sideline. That's your best bet. You got to sustain drives. You got to move the sticks. And the best way to do that, obviously, is first things first, you have to get favorable third down situations. And the way you do that is by running the ball, picking up 4 or 5 yards on first and second down, making third down manageable. You're moving the chains. You're keeping them on the sideline. And then, when you're in 3rd and 1, the playbook opens up to anything. And the defense has to honor run or pass. And that's really what the Broncos need to focus on, is getting that run game going, stay committed to it, try and keep that offense on the field, sustain some drives, and then anything's possible.
That's the best point you made right there in terms of stay with it. Don't give up on it. Don't abandon it. Don't go away from your strengths. If you fall behind 7-0, don't start passing and pass the ball 40 times a game. Stick to your bread and butter. It will pay off. If they have patience with the run game, they can keep this game close and potentially even win it in the fourth quarter. Nice
hat, Jordan, by the way. He says one of the winners of our Apple Podcast review giveaways, sporting himself a nice, handsome Mile High Huddle hat. He says, we'll find out if we're for real tomorrow. And I think that's a good kind of barometer of how this fan base is feeling, Zach, is, these last 2 wins after starting 0-4, the Broncos dug themselves a hole. These 2 wins have given everyone kind of a shot of confidence, but fans kind of don't dare to believe too much quite yet, because shades of 2018 are still clouding the memory, right? Where the Broncos came out of the bye and rattled off 3 convincing, hard-fought wins, but beat 2 quality opponents in the Chargers and the Steelers, went on the road, demolished the Bengals. Everything, they fought their way back into the playoff conversation after a so-so start, only to lose the final 4 games of the year. Here we are, less than 1 year later. The Broncos start 0-4. They're rattling off 2 wins. If they can beat the Chiefs, Zach, we talked about this a few weeks ago before they got their first win of the season. Starting with the Jags game, we looked at the schedule up until the bye, and if they can, they lost the Jags game, and we had included that in our analysis. But that being the case, you got 2 wins now. If you can beat the Chiefs, can you imagine the shot in the arm that's going to give this team? I think at that point we have to really start taking them seriously. But until then, we're still a little bit in that wait and see holding pattern.
Yeah, you mentioned change of 2018. Even 2017, when the Broncos with Vance started off 2-0 and they demolished the Cowboys, everyone was talking Super Bowl back then. Everyone was, riding the Broncos as this legit contender, and we saw what happened then. I'm not saying you shouldn't celebrate the wins or this winning streak, but they beat the Chargers, which are kind of a shaky team, and they beat the Titans, which weren't a great team. And like I said, they would prove me wrong, and they would instantly become more of a contender in my mind. You knock off the Chiefs in prime time, you go on a 3-game winning streak, you beat an elite opponent, you establish yourself back on the map, and then we take them for real. Then we can start talking possible playoffs. Then we can start talking Flacco as maybe a better quarterback that we give him credit for. But until that happens, Chad, until they knock off an elite opponent, they're always still a contender or a pretender and still proven otherwise.
Commander Shepard says Chris Harris is going to be the X factor in this game. Now, Zach, I don't know if he's going to be the X factor, but I do agree with Commander Shepard that he is going to be a X factor because they got to account for Tyreek Hill. Now, last year, the Broncos were able to, for the most part, keep Tyreek Hill in check. No huge plays, no scoring plays on offense anyway. And if they can duplicate that, you're missing Sammy Watkins. Yeah, you got Mecole Hardman that they're going to figure out how to weave him into the game plan. But if you can neutralize Tyreek Hill, it really comes down to Travis Kelce. And you don't want to completely sleep on LaShawn McCoy, who's and that Darrell Williams, the other running back, two very good running backs in their own right. You don't want to sleep on that. But if you can take away that explosive vertical threat that is Tyreek Hill, man, you give yourself quite the advantage. And I think that's where Chris Harris really comes into play.
Yeah, he does. He's a shifty slot guy, and it's easier said than done with Tyreek Hill because Seth mentioned, he brought up a good point on the pod. Tyreek Hill, or maybe it was off air when we talked about it, but he's not just this fast receiver. He's not just a speed guy. He has legit ball skills, and the Broncos have to account for that. Double teaming him, triple teaming him, bracketing him in coverage. They cannot let him get free. He is far and away the difference maker in that offense. They were not the same offense when Hill was not in the game for them. And the Broncos for sure will use Kareem Jackson, Chris Harris Jr., Simmons, all hands on deck, whatever it takes to slow down this passing game and give their offense a chance to at least match the production that Mahomes puts up.
Flippant Booch says the Broncos offense has been playing against top-ranked defenses. Chiefs defense is ranked 27th. While the Titans are ranked number 8, and we still put up 17 points. How much do you think we will put up? Zach, I predicted a 23-20 victory for the Denver Broncos. You predicted, 22, let me find it here, 22-16 Chiefs victory, okay? Mm-hmm. So this is the first time, for what it's worth, listeners and viewers, that Zach and I have parted ways on our picks. We started off together 0-5 on our picks. We both got our first win of the season and pick them on the Mile High Roundtable last week. I picked the Broncos win at 23 points to the Chiefs 20. Zach picked a Chiefs win, scoring 22-16. So explain to just for the Booch there who's asking how you kind of come to your thoughts on the scoring aspect of, the Broncos. They have played some really tough defenses to start this season. They're finally playing a softer opponent defensively. You don't think they can get to 20?
I mean, they could. I'm assuming that they're going to stall in the red zone where they can get touchdowns. I'm just looking at it realistically and not just predicting a 40-point, 50-burger game for the Broncos offense. And until Flacco shows me personally that he can be the one to get in the 20s and 30s consistently and put up the touchdowns and not turn the ball over, not take sacks, put the ball in the end zone, I'm going to always give the edge to the opponent. I just think Fangio will keep it close, but the game is more of an indictment on the Broncos offense and Flacco just not getting it done and not matching production with Mahomes. As hard as that is, I just think they're going to stall where they should be able to capitalize.
I can't disagree with your premises because both of us, we've been pretty hard on Joe Flacco of late, even in the face of the Broncos winning 2 games. I'm very much in a believe it when I see it from Flacco overall type deal, but I do think this is a game the Broncos will get to 20 points. Whether they end up winning remains to be seen. I picked them to win, but my thought process behind that is, again, there's a tremendous focus this week on keeping pace, staying on the field, scoring touchdowns, not field goals. And Rich Scangarello, in particular, the onus is really on him to design and scheme a good game for Joe Flacco and that rushing attack. I think because this is such a porous Chiefs defense and they're missing a couple of starters to boot, one in the secondary, one on the D-line, this is the game the Broncos, who up to this point in the season, they've gotten to 20, I think twice off the top of my head, 2 times they've gotten into the 20s. I think they can get it done. But it wouldn't surprise me if they completely crap the bed. And in fact, this kind of ties into what Kyle's asking us here. So I leave to go elk hunting tomorrow. Good luck, Kyle. Hope you get a bull or spike, or maybe you got a cow tag. I don't know what you got, but I don't want to miss a Bronco game. But I'm going to be an hour from the closest town. How confident are you that the Broncos will show up and make it a game? As I said, Zach, I won't be shocked if the Broncos crap the bed. However, I am confident that this is going to at least be a game. This is going to be a hard-fought battle. The Chiefs aren't going to come in and walk all over the Broncos. There's something about the fact that the team started 0-4 that is almost freeing, meaning that, all the pressures of, coming out and making it to the playoffs, even though that's not been ruled out and 2 games certainly helps him in that effort, the pressure and the expectations, if you look at that as a balloon, someone popped that with a pin. That's what their 0-4 start did. And in a sense, it's kind of freeing for these players and the coaches. They're like, all right, we can get all this cloud, this myopic pressure off our shoulders of the fans and the media, and we can just go out and do our job. There's something freeing about that, Zach. And I think the Broncos, whether they win or lose this game, they're going to come out and they're going to play this Chiefs team really tough and really close.
Yeah, in my roundtable prediction, I kind of mentioned last year's first Chiefs game where the Broncos should have won if not for that errant Keenum to Demaryius Thomas pass. I think the same thing. They might start off slow, but they're going to make it a hard-fought game for most of 60 minutes. It's going to come down to the fourth quarter, and it's either going to be Flacco stepping up and surpassing Mahomes in this game or just Mahomes taking over. But it's not going to be a blowout either way. The Chiefs aren't going to just demolish the Broncos. It being in Denver, it has some sort of advantage to it. Mahomes not being 100%, that's an advantage. It's going to be a close-ish game. It's going to be a very hard-fought game, and it's a coin flip in the fourth quarter as to who comes out on top.
All right, so Commander Shepard is asking us who we think will be the X factor. And then we have this question from Blicky. Will A.J. Johnson have another big game versus the Chiefs with an injured KC offense? And I bring up what Blicky's question is there because I think one of the X factors for the Broncos defensively, Chris Harris, we already talked about as being one of the X factors. But I think Johnson, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him because he's going up against arguably the best tight end in the game. Now, it's not to say he's going to draw him in coverage 100% of the time because he won't. There's going to be a lot of zone going on, and we don't know what Fangio has in store for this offense. We haven't seen him go up against Patrick Mahomes quite yet, but Johnson, a lot is going to be expected of him, not only to stuff the run and be on point with his run fits and his tackling being on point, but as a coverage guy, this is going to be the biggest test he's faced so far in his 3 starts. I think that the onus is very much going to be on him. If you go on a level-by-level basis, I'm going to say Von Miller needs to have a big game. Johnson needs to have a big game as a linebacker. Chris Harris needs to have a big game on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and the thing with Johnson, too, not only in run support, but I know he's going to be targeted in pass coverage if left on the field. And one-on-one with LaShawn McCoy or Damian Williams or Travis Kelce, the Chiefs are going to come after him now, and I don't think the Broncos would leave Johnson in a sort of spiral to watch Mahomes. To that level, though, I think it's a bigger game for Will Parks to be that dime backer, spying middle of the field, play some pass defense, come up in the box for run support. He hasn't been playing that well as of late. He's been really overshadowed by Kareem Jackson, and I think this is the game, like the Pittsburgh game last year, which was his coming out party for Parks. This could be the game where he shines and adds some muscle to that front and kind of just keeps Mahomes in check and keeps the tight ends and running backs from doing a lot of damage.
And by the way, this is the Huddle Up podcast coming to you on a live simulcast on both YouTube and Facebook for all of our new viewers who are joining us live here. Let's get this one out of the way, Zach. What do you guys think from Bob of the Cam Newton rumors of him coming to Denver? First and foremost, we have to dispel the rumors. It's not a rumor. It was one guy, Adam, how do you say his last name? Lefko of Bleacher Report, okay, that spitballed the idea that, with Kyle Allen going 4-0 as a starter in place of the injured Cam Newton, if the Panthers were to take a look at putting him on the trade market, the Broncos should be one of those teams that should be in on the sweepstakes. That's what this Bleacher Report analyst had to say. And of course, we cover it. It's interesting, the idea to spitball it. But I received a lot of questions personally, Zach, on social media. So I wrote an article up on it. I know you had a write-up on it as well. Your answer here for Bob.
It's just one of those crazy ideas that analysts and prognosticators throw out when the trade deadline's coming up, and that's exactly what it is. As I wrote, it doesn't make sense for a variety of reasons. The Broncos are really all in right now with Flacco and being this winning team. They wouldn't just make a rebuilding move and trade all these assets for Cam Newton. They can't afford Cam Newton right now. It's just they wouldn't happen absorbing his contract with Miller and Flacco, who they just tied themselves to financially the next couple of years. And it wouldn't make sense for the Panthers either, with they have a second-year undrafted free agent, even though he's 4-0, to give up on your former MVP quarterback without him proving or going through any sort of adversity. And on the Broncos side, his own team, the Panthers, isn't comfortable playing him yet until he's healthy. Why would Elway pick up that damaged goods and give up all those assets of compensation? It literally makes sense on no level. It's not going to happen. It's just one of those crazy ideas up there with the trading Von Millers and the takes of those worlds.
It's fun to talk about. It's fun to spitball, but yeah, it's not anything even remote. It's not even a rumor. It's just one guy saying, "Hey, the Broncos should do this." All right, this is from Brian. If Bashaud Breeland does not end up playing tomorrow, and he is questionable, cornerback, do you honestly see any of the Chiefs' corners being able to cover Sutton or Sanders? And that's a really good point, because they're going to be, even if Breeland plays, they're going to be without Kendall Fuller. The question is, yeah, you think, okay, Sutton and Sanders, they're going to be able to feast if Breeland doesn't play. But how much do you trust Joe Flacco to exploit that weakness, Zach?
I would put that more on Scangarello as the game planner and the coordinator is exploiting that weakness, but it's going to be one on the ground in the trenches. I don't look for Flacco to air the ball out 40 times. Even with their injured secondary, it's a good matchup for Courtland Sutton for sure, and he's going to get his yards regardless, but they got to lean on the ground game. They got to lean on Freeman and Lindsey, and they have to keep the clock moving and put the ball in the end zone. No matter how they do it, on the ground or through the air, they have to score touchdowns. But it's going to start, I believe, on the ground with Lindsey and Freeman.
Captain Drama, this is one of those games that, the Broncos, they're paying Flacco some big dollars, and this is one of those games that he needs to come through. And, crossing swords with arguably the best quarterback in the game and the reigning NFL MVP, this is the type of game in which he needs to go out there and earn that money big time. Here's one from Jess. Emmanuel Sanders has to go. Get those draft picks. Zach, at this stage, he's gone of course, he left halfway through week 6 with a knee injury, okay? And he's now gone, to round it up, he's gone 2 games with, I think it was, 2 catches, 9 yards total. Broncos won both those games. How, if I would have asked this question 4 weeks ago, it would have seemed to have been a self-evident answer. However, how crucial is Emmanuel Sanders to this offense now?
I don't think that much. I mean, he's a pretty important part as being the veteran and being the resident speed guy and kind of taking the top off, but he's not the number one receiver. That's Courtland Sutton, and Courtland Sutton is Joe Flacco's favorite target. He has the most chemistry. He's balling out this year. If anyone from the group that the Broncos are looking to have a fire sale on, supposedly, I could see Sanders being the one that goes. He has a big contract. He won't come back next year. So if the Broncos, if they can get any sort of assets for him, 6th, 5th, 7th round pick, whatever, I would take it only because to free up the money and the fact that he doesn't really have a role in this offense anymore. His production has diminished. Courtland Sutton is stepping up. And I just think they're going to face a more of a rebuild point of view with some of these defensive players, some of these offensive players and these veteran players. And I think it should start with Sanders.
I just don't think, let me put it this way, just from things I've picked up in this job over the last 6 months, I think the Broncos would do well to kind of wash their hands of some of the energy. Let me just put it that way, that Emmanuel Sanders brings to the locker room, and not the good kind. He gets compared a lot to Chris Harris Jr., and I don't think it's fair, because if you look at it, I don't think Chris Harris Jr. ever takes a play or a game off, and I think there's questions as to whether or not Emmanuel Sanders does. I think you could get by as a Broncos offense with the model that they established over the last 2 weeks. You could get by without him, but this is the type of game where we're going to really find out how crucial he is to the Broncos model, because there are going to be those opponents like the Chiefs, whom they're going to have to face again later in the season, and the Houston Texans they're going to have to face later in the season, where you're going to have to put up some points, and you're going to have to at times throw the football. And if a defense sells out to scheme Courtland Sutton out of a game, he's been good so far through 6 games. Don't get me wrong on Sutton, but let us not forget down the stretch last year as a rookie when he became a starter and became the number 1 guy when Sanders went down. And I mean, he disappeared, okay, that final quarter of the season. So I understand that there's questions there, but this is the game. This is the game where we're going to find out, Zach, how crucial and how important he really is to this Broncos formula. And let's check out here what Juice says. Juice says, we don't suck against tight ends so far this season. Does that continue? And that's a fair point because the Broncos have struggled. I mean, it's a common trope within Broncos country. The team struggles against opposing tight ends. And, you know, part of the problem or part of the reason for that, I think, is because there have been some really good tight ends in this division dating back years now, from the Tony Gonzalez's to the Antonio Gates and now, of course, Travis Kelce. But Vic Fangio has neutralized that with his scheme. Do you think they're going to be able to do that this week against Travis Kelce?
Kelce, though, I mean, we talk about the tight ends the Broncos have played, and they have played him well, but Kelce's just cut from a different cloth. He's a different breed tight end. He's a huge guy, very fast, great route runner, great, good hands. He's going to be a handful, and he's going to get his yards. It's just going to come down to, like Mahomes, are those yards enough? Are they less than what you have? Are the points they put up less than what you can put up? They're going to get their work. They're going to get their reps. They're going to get their yardage, but how much damage can you control? What are you limited to? That's the big thing in this game.
Yeah. Just don't let the stars beat you. Find a way to limit them. There are ways to do it, but honestly, it really does start with getting after Patrick Mahomes. And the Chiefs are going to throw some things at him. I mean, all that pre-snap movement, the motions, the jet sweeps, they're going to try and kill him with speed. And it will be interesting to see how Fangio's defense adjusts to that or how they play that. But let's turn the page and talk quarterbacks here. Zach from Jay says, hello, I'm glad I caught you guys live streaming today. Could we do what Baltimore did last season and put in Drew Lock if Flacco falls off? Drew Lock technically could begin practicing this week. It was a weird week because of the short week. So as Fangio said, it's kind of a wasted week for Lock in terms of reps. That's going to play more into next week. He can be activated and on the roster in week 9 after full 8 games are under their belt. What's your answer for our question there?
I just remember how one of Flacco's first pressers, he was asked about Lamar Jackson replacing him, and you can tell he was so mad about how things unfolded in Baltimore. If that would happen again, if he got, let's say, Wally pipped again for the second year in a row by a younger, more upside quarterback in Drew Lock, that would just devastate him personally. But as long as they keep winning like we talk about, he's going to have this big leash, and the Broncos are going to get Lock on the practice field. They're going to have him in the building and being around the offense. But until they start losing and Flacco either gets injured or really starts crapping the bed badly, we're not going to see Lock and that scenario play out again, I don't think.
From Deb, she says, can Royce Freeman get one game with 25 to 30 carries without Phillip Lindsay? Freeman is a workhorse and is not producing enough because he doesn't get enough carries, splitting them with Phillip Lindsay. I think this is a game, Zach, where you try and feed Royce Freeman. You know, I understand it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of a catch-22 situation because you don't want to take plays away from arguably your most explosive offensive player, who is Phillip Lindsay. But at the same time, this is one of those games where you want to pound the middle of that defense between the tackles with a guy like a big bruiser like Royce Freeman.
And Freeman had a great game against Kansas City last year. He carried a bunch of defenders in the end zone with him. He had that nice run that we talked about at the time. But yeah, on first and second down, this is the game plan for Denver. Wear this team out with Royce Freeman as the battering ram. Just weaken them in the gut, a lot of gut punches, and then go for that knockout blow in the fourth quarter with Phillip Lindsay. If they can do that and keep the game close by then and just wear this defense out, then you can take shots. Then you can open up things for Sanders, for Sutton. It just all starts with the ground game. And I do agree that Freeman is going to be an integral piece, but you just cannot take carries. You cannot take snaps or reps away. You cannot have Lindsay on the bench. He is indisputably the Broncos' best offensive player, arguably the Broncos' best player overall from a game-breaking perspective, and you have to get him on the field as much as possible. But Freeman, yeah, big part of the game plan. If they can wear him down, I like their odds.
Brandon says Kareem Jackson needs to have a big game, and he's coming off 2 games in a row in which he's been an absolute animal and a stud for this Broncos defense. I maintain that if he would have been active for week 4 against the Jags aren't able to come back and run the ball down the Broncos' throats in that second half. He is one of those players that, he's a difference maker. And in games like this, Elway talked about this a couple weeks ago when the Broncos were still dealing with the losing streak, that great players need to play great. And I'll add to that in this situation, great players need to play great in big moments, and this is one of those moments.
Yeah, Jackson's going to be integral in either defending Tyreek Hill over the top or defending Travis Kelce. He's that big physical safety corner hybrid. But yeah, he Will Parks, Alexander Johnson, those are the big defensive integral pieces of the game plan for Denver, just because that KC offense is so explosive. If Jackson plays as well as he's played the last couple of weeks, that the Broncos defense as a whole should play pretty well against the Chiefs.
All right, let me grab really quick, Zach, a pre-submitted question, because we don't want to completely ignore everyone who took the time to get their questions in early. Harry says, now that teams have plenty of tape showing the Chiefs' run defense is lacking, I suspect Andy Reid will load the box against the Broncos' offense. Okay, I think Reid is okay taking his chances with a shootout between Mahomes and Flacco, and such a measure would prevent us from controlling time of possession like the Texans just did. Thought. So is he saying that he thinks Andy Reid is – I'm kind of confused by that one, Zach.
I think he thinks Andy Reid's going to sell out to just stop the run and just make Flacco beat them, which isn't a bad game plan, isn't a bad idea. I just don't know how practical that is just loading the box on every down, because eventually Sanders or Fant or Sutton will get free. So I don't think Reid is going to go to that extreme to stop the Broncos offense. I think he feels pretty comfortable with how they played.
Jacob says, win or lose this season, going forward, the Broncos need to start to lean on these stacked rookie classes that are heavy on leadership. And, that kind of echoes what I was saying about Emmanuel Sanders. And it also speaks to eventually the team needs to turn the page and really bite the bullet in the truest sense of the word and go with Drew Lock and just give up the ghost of Super Bowl 50. You just this team on a leadership level needs to let that go and commit to, as Jacob says, almost all of these young players the Broncos have added since 2018 through the draft were either team captains or just strong character, high football IQ guys that match their talent, their football character and their intangibles match their tangibles. I think we're starting to see, Zach, a kind of, passing of the torch. But I don't think you can really see that take shape without the quarterback being a part of that.
And to that extent, too, when Fangio talked about that council of players that he had, I wish, absent were young players, absent were rookie players. And I understand they haven't really been the core of the team. They're still kind of a veteran-led team for the most part. But I want the younger players, the Phillip Lindsays, the Cortland Suttons. They're the future, and they should have the most influence, and they should have the most clout. A lot of these defensive players that are around now are not going to be there next year. So the team's last couple draft classes they had, Elway has killed it, indisputably. They will get a big return on their investment. I just wish Fangio and the coaching staff will put a little more faith, I guess a little more respect into their output or input.
Derek says, can't wait to have Bryce Callahan on the field. He's really good. He was good last year for the Bears, but talk about a guy who's been on a milk carton, disappearing act. That injury has really cost him. And even Elway admitted last Friday at the Fantaniel deal leading up to the Titans game that I know we've kind of told everyone 4 to 6 weeks since that last procedure, but they really don't have any idea if they're going to get Bryce Callahan back this year, Zach. But if they could get him back, man, that could alleviate so much stress. Get Devontae Harris from playing starter snaps to, playing rotational backup role and nickel. And it would put the team closer toward what the vision for this defense was for Vic Fangio and John Elway before the injury bug struck.
I'm not even sure Bryce Callahan's a real person, Chad. I like to know if he's even on the roster, if he even really exists. Obviously, seriously, though, with the limited time that we did see him in practice earlier this offseason, he was great. He is that missing piece they need right now after losing Bosby, especially with Duke Dawson being injured. But until that happens, he's still going to be MIA. And even when he comes back, though, he's going to have so much rust for missing so much time. It might be the next year till we see the full, healthy Bryce Callahan. And that would look like a lemon kind of signing for John Elway.
All right, a couple more, and then we got to get out of here for tonight, you guys. From Eclipse Stormborn, this one is pre-submitted. He says, happy hump day, fellas. Double question this evening. Now that Andy Janovich has his extension, who do you think will get the next in-season deal? I'm hoping we can lock up Simmons and get Wolf on some type of veteran 2-year retirement package contract. What are your guys' opinion? And what is Leary? Is he done after the season? I think yes, at least as a Bronco. Thanks and peace from Philly. Appreciate it, Eclipse. I do think Leary, this is his last season as a Bronco. And it's not just due to play, but it's mostly due to the contract that he signed. He's not worth what the Broncos are on the hook for next year. So yeah, I do think that. But Zach, who has Simmons shown you enough? 2 games in a row now with an interception. Wolf coming off a game in which he got 2 sacks. Eric Trickle broke that down on film, and he was playing like the old Wolf. Are either of those guys now, with 6 games under their belt, guys that you would consider or you would advocate for the Broncos to get re-signed here in season?
Well, Simmons was my preseason pick to get a big contract or an extension. And when the Broncos made that move with Flacco to free up cap space, I thought that was for sure to re-sign Simmons. But I wouldn't just hand out money to hand out money. He has to prove that he's worthy of that contract. And he's starting to play better, yeah, but I want to see that a little more consistently. And they can still get him for a better value than they would if they waited till he hits the free agent market. In terms of defensive linemen, I don't see Wolf being re-signed, especially in season. One guy I do see is a possibility is Shelby Harris, only because he has more position flexibility. He's younger, more upside. I don't even see Wolf coming back next year, let alone getting another contract. But Shelby Harris, if you start to turn it on like we saw last year, he could be a guy the Broncos want to lock down.
It wouldn't surprise me, just based on things I've been told, that if things just, if this is a short-lived kind of turnaround and the Broncos end up finishing way sub 500 and it's just another lost season, wouldn't surprise me to see Derek Wolfe actually retire. He really doesn't want to play for any other team than the Denver Broncos. He just got married. He just had a new baby. His home, his life is in Denver. He's a guy that's very much about loyalty. He doesn't want to have to go play anywhere else. However, if the Broncos have themselves a solid season and turn this thing around and he continues to play like he did last week, he's absolutely going to be in the conversation for this front office to look at a short-term, let's make sure you retire as a Bronco type of deal and reward him for his efforts. But there's still, Zach, I think, a stretch to go before that becomes really a consideration or a conversation for this team. Stu wants us to talk about Big Mike Purcell. And wow, I mean, there's 3 moves that the Broncos made on the personnel level post Bradley Chubb's injury that have made all the world of difference in this team turning it around. And it really started with them recognizing that Shelby Harris was not getting it done as the nose tackle at the point of attack. And one of the reasons for that, as Eric Trickle pointed out in another film piece today at milehighhuddle.com, is that he struggles to get off blocks. He can consume blocks. In other words, he can just sit there and consume blocks, but he can't get off blocks to make tackles. And there are other reasons why. But long story short, Harris wasn't getting it done at nose tackle. So they decided to bench Adam Gotsis. He's been a healthy scratch now 2 games in a row. And kick Harris out to his position at defensive end, opposite of Derek Wolfe. Meanwhile, put Mike Purcell in at nose tackle. And then, of course, A.J. Johnson has been supplanted, Corey Nelson / Josie Jewell as the other starting inside linebacker next to Todd Davis. Those 3 changes have made a world of difference. And it also, of course, coincided with Kareem Jackson coming back and staying healthy. And so there are a multitude of factors. But undoubtedly, Zach, having Mike Purcell at nose tackle, that's a big reason why the Broncos against the Chargers relinquished only 35 yards rushing and then 39 the next week against the Titans. 2 teams that have some really good running backs.
Yeah, I don't think Elway wanted to admit it, but as we saw in the preseason, they were getting gashed by the run, and they kind of missed Domata Peko's presence. He was a pure run stuffer, but he did his one job well, and they didn't really have a guy who had that role down. They had Zach Kerr, but he wasn't a high upside player. They had Shelby Harris, who's not a true nose tackle, and it wasn't working out. They put Mike Purcell in. We were talking about in the preseason. He keeps making plays. He buzzes around the football. He's just a better run stuffer. He's a better gap shooter in the Vic Fangio system. And the only thing I question is why it took so long for Fangio to make that switch, why it took so long to make Gotsis inactive. He was struggling. Those personnel moves can always be criticized, but to me, better late than never. It totally revitalized the run defense, and I think going forward, he's going to be a pretty integral piece of that front 7.
Abdi, what happened to Broncos on 24/7 Sports? Well,
how much time you got?
Yeah, we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I think it's good a reminder because I still get a lot of questions from people on social media. I'm sure you do as well. Yeah. Long story short, without going into territory that we probably shouldn't, the mothership decided to shut down 24/7 Sports NFL coverage and keep 24/7 Sports purely a college platform. And so what they did is they rolled that up into CBS Sports and changed all the Facebook pages to Denver Broncos on CBS Sports, which kind of pulled the rug out from under guys like Zach and myself. And we had to seek a platform and a place to hang our hats elsewhere. both of us landed on our feet. MileHighHuddle.com goes on a new network with Sports Illustrated and the Maven. And Zach moved on to, of course, Heavy, where he's just been absolutely killing it, still covering the Broncos, also doing the Huddle Up podcast with me as well. So what we're really doing on a day-to-day hasn't really changed all that much. But that's kind of, Zach, the Cliff Notes version. I think it's safe enough to go at least tell them that much.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. It was just layoffs, announced layoffs, but kind of sudden layoffs, and they made a decision to just terminate the NFL department. Chad pretty much laid it out perfectly. They just made a decision that they didn't want to go forward with that, and that's the nature of this business, though. Without getting too much into it, we can take a whole pod talking about the this industry, but that's the nature of this business. It's volatile. You never know what's going to happen, and it can affect you at any time. Fortunately, Chad and I are blessed that we did land on our feet, and we're still able to bring you guys a great podcast and great content.
Yep. And one thing that's cool that you guys can always rest assured on is that Mile High Huddle has become an entity unto its own in the community and the readership and the social media presence, where Mile High Huddle doesn't need it's not dependent on a platform. So whether we are on Scout, whether we are on 24/7 Sports, CBS, Sports Illustrated, wherever we are, and we love being on with Sports Illustrated and the Maven, by the way, but wherever we are, we can exist on our own, and that's freeing for guys like Zach and myself, where we don't have to worry about where we can hang our hat. So it's never going away. The brand continues. It's bigger than us as individuals, and the podcast has grown into something way bigger than either of us as individuals, and that's thanks to all of you guys who are just great listeners. You're with us on these live simulcasts, and again, Zach, we've already run. I mean, we're about 15, 20 minutes beyond our normal time frame that we do a podcast. So, and we could continue going, I think, for another 15, 20 minutes, or if not longer. But we got other things we got to get to cover this Broncos Chiefs game. So, Zach, I think that'll do it for tonight.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on the last point, thank you guys. We do appreciate it. Was a transition going from 24/7 and Chad and I going to different forks in the road, but still coming to this platform together. We do appreciate you guys hanging in there and being so active with us, and we love bringing you guys this pod. We love coming out with new ideas, and we're so happy that you like these live broadcasts. Fortunately, or hopefully, we'll have an optimistic and happy one for you tomorrow after the game. Right, Chad?
Absolutely. Here's to hoping. And by the way, big thanks to everyone who has chipped in on Super Chat.
Yes,
not just today, but in days past when we do these live simulcasts. That goes a long way. It's very helpful, a phenomenal way to support the show, support what Zach and I are doing, and keep food in our bellies and a roof over our heads so we can keep bringing you guys this coverage. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of the Huddle Up Podcast. As always, you guys make sure you're following the show on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. That's the best way to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with the Huddle Up Podcast in real time. Make sure you're following my partner on Twitter at Kelberman NFL. He's tweeting all day long, covering stories, tweeting out links. You don't want to miss any of that. Myself at Chad and Jensen, and of course at Mile High Huddle. Keep your chin up. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Broncos Country is going to be a great game, and then Zach and I will be back immediately following the game with another live simulcast on YouTube and Facebook. The gut reaction, it waits for none. We will be there to live through the aftermath, whether it be good or bad for your Denver Broncos. But anyway, thanks again for joining us. For Zack Kelberman, I'm Chad Jensen. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow night.